Welcome to the Global News Podcast from the BBC. I'm Celia Hatton, and today I'm joined by our diplomatic correspondent, Paul Adams. Paul, there's still so much to be decided as the US and Iran try to hammer out a nuclear agreement as part of their extended ceasefire. What are the main sticking points we're seeing now?
Well, I think, Celia, it's probably worth just looking at what the memorandum of understanding that was signed last week actually says about the nuclear issue. It's not a great deal, but it is important. It says that Iran reaffirms that it will not attempt to develop or procure a nuclear weapon. That's something that Iran has been doing, frankly, since the 1970s. So that's not really new, but it is an important statement nonetheless. Then it says that the two sides agree, and I'm going to quote here because it's important to get the language right. The two sides agree to resolve the disposition of stockpiled enriched material. That is a reference to the estimated 440 kilograms of uranium hexafluoride, which has been enriched to around 60%, highly enriched uranium, essentially, plus other amounts enriched to lower levels. And then returning to the quote, with the minimum methodology to be downblending on site under supervision of the IAEA. In other words, that highly enriched uranium needs to be reduced in its strength, either through downblending, as it's known in the business, in Iran or somewhere else. And that is the key to the lifting of sanctions. As for Iran's future right or ability to enrich uranium, that will be the subject of a final agreement.
The two sides, the US and Iran, seem to be in deadlock on one big issue, and that's allowing international inspectors to visit Iranian nuclear sites. What have they been saying?
Obviously, this will be an important part of any deal. And it is perhaps the first thing that has come up as a potential stumbling block. And I think it is worth saying from the outset that this is going to be a long and contentious process. And we are likely to have many, many days in which the two sides say very different things about the same subject. So what Donald Trump said on the question of international inspectors, and again, I'm quoting here, and this was from Tuesday, Iran has fully and completely agreed to highest level nuclear inspections long into the future, brackets infinity, double exclamation mark. This will ensure nuclear honesty. Now, the Iranians, for their part, said that there was no such agreement, that they had not even been in touch with the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, and that what were described as sort of boasts about what was going on in the negotiations weren't going to help the process at all. The head of the IAEA, Rafael Grossi, has said that enrichment sites will be visited, but that, and they haven't been visited, by the way, since the middle of last year. And what he said is, we will have to inspect whether this happens the day after tomorrow, or in a week, or in 10 days. It's important, but not essential. This is going to happen. Inspections are absolutely vital for this process. No one is going to trust Iran to do things without international eyes on every part of the process. So it is absolutely vital that this will take place. We don't yet have the arrangements for that in place.
And of course, we have to remember that Iran has allowed these inspections to take place before under past agreements, right?
Indeed, that was the case under the deal that was reached in 2015, the JCPOA, or the Iran Nuclear Agreement, as it was known for short. This was negotiated under the Obama administration, but also with the input of the other permanent members of the UN Security Council, Russia, China, Britain, and France, along with Germany and the EU. So it was a really international effort with negotiations that went on for a couple of years and resulted in a very long and very detailed agreement. And part of that was that the IAEA should be involved in the inspection of the process. And until Donald Trump withdrew from that agreement in 2018, essentially, that was what was happening. The International Atomic Energy Agency inspectors were in there, able to monitor the process, and on and off, and with reducing effectiveness, it has to be said, after he withdrew, they remained there until last year.
President Trump famously withdrew from that earlier deal that was reached in 2015 by the Obama administration, saying that he could strike a much better one. How likely does that look right now?
Look, I think people are right to be skeptical. Donald Trump is not known for his attention to detail. He does not have a team of experts, well versed in this very complicated set of issues to do with Iran's nuclear program. He may find that his attention moves on to other matters. Having said that, he is utterly determined to be able to turn around to the American public and the world at the end of this process and say to them, I've done a deal that is better than the deal that I walked away from in 2018, better than anything achieved by Barack Obama. He is, I think it's fair to say, obsessed with the idea of having a better legacy than Barack Obama. And so he certainly has a personal motivation for this. And I think there is one other thing that is also worth bearing in mind, which is that this is not a process being embarked upon from scratch. If you think back to the 12-day war last year, in which, again, Israel and the United States attacked Iran, there was enormous damage done to Iran's nuclear infrastructure at the time. That is why the 440 kilograms of highly enriched uranium are thought to be buried under the rubble somewhere. That is why there has been no enrichment of any kind, no centrifuges spinning, no meaningful work on Iran's nuclear program since those strikes. So this is not a process designed to halt a well-functioning nuclear program, such as we saw in 2015. This is an effort designed to capitalize on damage already done to Iran's nuclear program. And I think partly for that reason, and Donald Trump's ambitions, we should at least give this process a chance.
What do you think Iran would be happy with at the end of the day? What does it want out of that part of the deal?
Well, Iran has always insisted, one, that it is not trying to acquire a nuclear weapon, and at various times that has seemed plausible. At other times it has seemed questionable, particularly as it has raced to enrich uranium to much higher levels than required for a civilian program since 2018. But it also says that it reserves the right, that it has the right to enrich uranium as a signatory of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. And so it is highly unlikely to give up that right as part of this deal. Now, part of the JCPOA, the 2015 deal, put restrictions on Iran's abilities to enrich uranium, restrictions on its entire program, but ones that expired after 15 years, basically after 2030. And that was the basis for a great deal of criticism by Donald Trump and other critics of the JCPOA. They said, look, this is merely putting off the problem. So any deal struck by this negotiating process will have to address that issue. To what extent and when will Iran be allowed to pursue any kind of nuclear program? If you listen to Donald Trump at various times, he's indicated that Iran should never have that right. At other times, you have a recognition that Iran probably will have to have some kind of ability to pursue a program. So the question will end up being, how long will the restrictions on Iran's program be in place? And again, that comes back to the whole question of Donald Trump wanting to be able to turn around to his supporters and his critics and say, look, the deal I've struck is better than the one that Barack Obama struck.
It's interesting, Paul, because you're our diplomatic correspondent. You've watched, these kinds of negotiations go on over the years. A lot of people say that the Iranians are some of the world's toughest negotiators. So even if Donald Trump wants to get a deal over the line, it's going to take a long period of time. Would you agree with that they are some of the toughest negotiators he could be facing right now?
I think it's generally acknowledged that they are exactly that, because they've had a great deal of practice. They've been an isolated country pursuing their own security and their regional strategy in the teeth of formidable international opposition for a very long time, and all the while trying to preserve the Islamic Republic. And so, yes, they are battle-hardened both militarily and diplomatically. And I think some people will argue that, what Donald Trump describes as regime change is perhaps a regime toughening, that the new breed, the new guard in power in Tehran, they're not the Revolutionary Guard. They're people who grew up in the Islamic Revolution. They're less interested in the revolutionary rhetoric, perhaps less interested in some of the strict religious aspects of the revolution, and more interested in statecraft, in preserving the regime, and in also preserving and enhancing Iran's reputation and power as a regional player. At the moment, we're in a 60-day process. That's ticked down a few days now. It is open-ended. The memorandum of understanding says that if both sides agree to continue, they will. I think most people think that it is likely to go on much longer than that. The question is, can each side maintain, to their own satisfaction, a sense of momentum, of achievement, or at some point does the whole thing break down? Then there are multiple reasons why it could do that, whether it's the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon, or a fundamental breakdown over the terms of what a nuclear deal should look like. All of these things could wreck it.
The BBC's diplomatic correspondent, Paul Adams. And if you'd like to hear more from the Global News Podcast, click the link below. Thanks for watching.